Good evening. I am Kat Hobson, owner of WBHM Digital Broadcasting, host of Paranormal Experience with Kat Hobson, and the voice of Fate on Fate Magazine Radio. Thank you so much for being here. Shelly's show tonight is a rebroadcast of the most haunted places in America. It's a pretty decent show. I absolutely loved every minute of it. Before we get to the show, I just wanted to say that we as a station are very aware that today is the anniversary of 9/11. We lost over 2,800 people here in the United States. They were not just Americans. They were here from all over, and they were here to take advantage of the good fortune we have here in our nation. People are trying to change that actively, and you know what? The reason that they do that is because they are envious that they don't have what we do in their nation. We're in turmoil right now, but that's not going to last. I mean, 2020 is going to be in the books before we know it, right? We'll be started on a new year with a fresh look and just be going gangbusters. But just please tonight, in whatever manner you do, lift up the people who lost their most important person on 9/11, 19 years ago. They matter. Thank you so much for tolerating me. It just matters to me so much. We have a great nation, and sometimes we fail to realize it until we talk to immigrants. We should talk to more of them. But here you go. Enjoy the show. Ghost Talk Radio with 187 PI starts now. Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The opinions of hosts and guests do not necessarily reflect the opinion of this network.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama. This is Ghost Talk with 187 PI. Sit back and prepare yourselves for an adventure into the paranormal world with host Shelly Robertson and 187 PI research team. Ghost Talk is broadcasting live from Ohio's most haunted jail. Learn about their ongoing research at the jail and abroad, investigation techniques, and their personal encounters. Here is your host of Ghost Talk and 187 PI founder, Shelly Robertson.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Ghost Talk Radio with me as your host, Shelly Robertson. Tonight, I have kind of an exciting show planned for you. I'll be discussing some of the haunted places right here in the United States. I would like to invite all my listening friends out there tonight to join me in chat at WBHM-DB.com, where you can join in on the conversation and ask me any questions you might have or offer some haunting stories of your own. Now, before I get into all of these fancy places, I must first make this disclaimer. Some of the places in tonight's show may be working locations and some may be empty or non-working, hence abandoned locations. Most of them I try to cover are places that you can actually go to and experience some of these hauntings. Now, it is your responsibility to acquire appropriate permissions before investigating any locations featured in tonight's show. Private property should be respected at all, as should all posted signs concerning trespassing, hours of operation, and other local regulations. There's been, in the past, many ghost hunters who've been arrested because they failed to contact property owners or local authorities ahead of time. So, please, everyone, make sure you get permission before lurking about at any of these properties. So, first of all, let's talk just a little bit on how or why a location can become haunted. Now, there is many reasons, speculations, and theories as to how and why a location can become haunted. So, some of the most common speculated reasons are a tragic event could have happened at the location, a spirit could be attached to the location, there could be an object at the location that a spirit is attached to, the spirit could have died tragically or, they may have some type of unfinished business. A spirit could be attached to the land a building or dwelling sits on. Someone could have practiced occult rituals at a location. The location itself may be built out of materials that hold on to residual energies of a spirit. There are just so many variables and speculations as to why a location may be haunted. And I even have a few of my own theories as to why and how this happens as well. So, that being said, let's move on to some of the most haunted locations right here in America, shall we? While there are many, many haunted locations in America, I will be discussing only a few of them as time allows me to do this evening. So, the first on my list tonight is the Haunted Frontier Prison in Rawlins, Wyoming. Now, this prison is considered to be one of the, haunted prisons in the United States that draws the most attention from paranormal researchers, ghost hunters, and everyday people who are seeking a little adventure, okay? This prison also goes by the name of the Old Pen. Now, the very first cornerstone of the prison, it was laid in 1888, but due to funding issues and Wyoming's notorious weather, the doors wouldn't open for 13 years. In December of 1901, the prison opened and consisted of 104 cells, which they obviously named Cell Block A. There was no electricity, no running water, and very inadequate heating, as were many of the prisons back in them time periods. Now, throughout this prison's operation, there were approximately 13,500 people who were incarcerated, including 11 women. Several additions to this penitentiary was completed in 1904, adding 32 cells to the west end of the original cell block, which was Cell Block A. And women were housed in this prison until 1909. And the last woman who was there was transferred that year to Colorado. Now, the addition of the second cell block, which was Cell Block B, and that was added in 1950, and it temporarily relieved the overcrowding of the population. And this Cell Block B also included solitary confinement cells, a much more sufficient heating system, and hot running water, which wouldn't be installed in the original cell block for another 28 years. So, Cell Block B, new addition, had running hot water. Cell Block A still did not. All right. Now, a maximum security addition, which they called Cell Block C, that was completed in 1966. But this addition only included 36 cells, and it was reserved for the most serious discipline cases, okay? The prison was equipped with several different means of disciplining inmates throughout its operation, including a dungeon. And several of the places built back in them time periods, even my jail, for example, has a dungeon area, right? There were several variations of solitary confinement. And there was actually at this prison what they called a punishment pole. And this is where they would handcuff men to this pole and they would whip them with rubber hoses. I think that's a little bit of cruel punishment there. Now, the prison also used different execution methods. The first two executions were carried out using the traveling Julian gallows, which were used in 1903. In 1916, the penitentiary completed the addition of the death house, which consisted of 6 cells to house inmates on death row. And it had a unique indoor version of the Julian gallows. So they would hang people in the death house area, right? Now, the building also housed the gas chamber, and it was chosen to replace hangings as Wyoming's execution method in 1936. Now, ultimately, 14 death sentences were carried out, 9 men were hanged, and 5 were executed in the gas chamber by the use of hydrocyanic acid gas. Now, in 1981, this prison was officially closed, and it would not be used again to house convicted criminals. The current state of the prison is that it's a famous tourist attraction and a museum, so you can go there. And, you know, it's very appealing to many individuals, especially those who conduct paranormal research or like to go on ghost hunting activities. Now, about the hauntings there. Many individuals who are employees to the particular museum here at the prison, they stated that they have seen apparitions firsthand in various locations in the prison. It is not known exactly for sure what type of hauntings there are, but I would assume, as I listen to some of these, that some of the witnesses have said the spirits don't seem to be aware of the presence, and to me, that indicates potentially a residual haunting. Then there are many more reported cases in which the spirit was aware and attempted to interact with them. And I would venture to say that these are intelligent hauntings. Now, there's been no reports of mischief or major problems, you know, such as poltergeist activity or demonic presence there. Many visitors and employees have stated that certain areas of the Frontier Prison seem to give you really intense emotional feelings when they go into these areas. They say it feels like it was a hostile environment, and they also experience fear. And there are several areas in this prison that seem to have a lot of paranormal activity, like sounds and disembodied voices and slamming of doors, and sometimes even cries can be heard. In the areas that's reported mostly of this activity occurs is in the showers, the chapels, various cells, and of course on death row. So, as you know, many of the prisons back in that time period, the conditions were just not optimal for the inmates. And they were bleak living conditions. So as you can imagine, being made of steel and concrete and limestone, many of these places, and if it holds on to some of this residual energy, it's going to feel dark and sad and gloomy and doomy. That's what I believe. you know. The next place we're going to go to is in Atlanta, Georgia. And we're going to go to Oakland Cemetery. And this place was founded in 1850 as a city cemetery. And at the time, it only had 6 acres. Well, it quickly grew to 48 acres by the Civil War period, which caused, of course, the Civil War caused massive burials in the city for soldiers. There are 70,000 plus residents at this cemetery, 40,000 markers, 12,000 bodies who remain nameless and markerless, and 3,000 unmarked graves. And in this cemetery, you'll notice that many of the markers resembles beds, and it is assumed because this is their final place of rest. The place is historic, and it's been reported that it's very haunted. Now, it's in the Confederate section where some visitors have reported hearing the roll call of the dead, all right? Now, the legend has it that on November 14th, which is the anniversary of the day Confederate troops surrendered Atlanta, a ghostly voice recites the names of the Confederate soldiers buried in Oakland. At times, people have reported hearing men respond after names have been called out. Other Oakland visitors have reported seeing men in Confederate uniforms wandering around the cemetery, and at first sight, many of the people thought they were reenactors of some kind. But visitors inquired at the cemetery's information center, and they learned that there were no costumed actors on site. There's this lady named tongue-tied, named Margaret Mitchell, okay? She's the author of the famed Civil War era novel, Gone with the Wind. I know y'all have heard of that, probably seen the show, all of that. Okay, well, she is also buried at Oakland Cemetery. And in her novel, Mitchell describes the monotonous rows of soldiers' graves at Oakland Cemetery that stretched longer every day. That's in her book, the Gone with the Wind book. Now, people have claimed to have seen her apparition near her grave at various times. Though the Confederate ghosts dominate Oakland Cemetery, there have been sightings of Union soldiers as well. Now, in 1862, 7 members of the Union Army were hanged in Oakland for their role in stealing a Confederate locomotive and attempting to cripple the railroad. Now, the executioned ghosts, they appear in Oakland hanging from the trees. That's been reported by many, many people have seen this. So that would be a sight to see, right? Next, we're going to go on to Surrey, Virginia, and there's this place there called Bacon's Castle. Bacon's Castle is the oldest brick house in the United States and was once the home of Arthur Allen, who was a prosperous merchant and planter, and of course he brought his family to the area as well. Now, Allen's brick house earned the moniker Bacon's Castle in 1665 when several of Nathaniel Bacon's men occupied the home for 4 months during the uprising that became known as Bacon's Rebellion. Now, Bacon's Castle is of high Jacobean architecture and notable for its stunning triple-stacked chimneys, okay? The home features a reconstructed 17th century English formal garden that's been restored by the Garden Club of Virginia. And oh my gosh, I can just know that is so beautiful because I just love how English gardens are and all the different flowers that are planted in them. I'm sure it's just stunning. Now, several outbuildings also survive, including an 1830 slave dwelling. Okay. Now, let's go back a little bit on this property. On September 18th, 1676, okay, the Arthur Allen House was seized by Bacon, and about 70 of his followers was with him, okay? So fortunately, Mayor Allen he fled from Surrey County, but his home was not lucky because the people with Bacon would occupy the mansion for 3 to 4 months, only deserting their posts when their leader died of dysentery on October 26th. So, when it was finally safe for Allen and his family to return, what they came back to, of course, was a house left in complete disarray. What wasn't pillaged and looted through by the rebels was severely damaged or completely destroyed. Okay? So, many believe in this area, and this is something that goes along with it. Many believe that a comet which streaked through the sky in the fall of 1675 may have foreshadowed this horrible, horrible event. So, with that, we will be back after this short break, and I will tell you what comes of this comet when we get back from break. You are listening to Ghost Talk Radio on WBHM-DB.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama. Since 1948, Fate Magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
We are confident that none of our hosts are possessed. Being repossessed a few times? That might be a different story. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to Ghost Talk Radio with me as your host, Shelly Robertson. And tonight I am talking about some of the most haunted locations in America. And before break, we were talking about Bacon's Castle, okay? And you know how, Bacon overtook the castle and Alan regained it later on. But there's something really interesting, incredible that happens in this area of this house, which you have to mention it because I think it's to do with paranormal activity. So I mentioned that there was this comet that streaked through the sky in the fall of 1675, and it may have foreshadowed the horrible event that took place, right? Now, during the colonial times, the superstitious people, they saw such cosmic fireballs as bad omens, okay? There was a comet sighting in 1644, for instance, that was immediately followed by a bloody Indian raid. Another preceded a tragic death of a young woman. There was this girl who had been banned from a lover she'd been secretly seeing behind her father's back. Well, of course, you know how kids can be. One night she decided to sneak out and visit him anyway, but this flame from her candle that she was carrying caught her dress and lit her on fire. Okay, so people are thinking that perhaps the love letter that's etched into one of the castle's windows was left by her before she died. That is pretty darn interesting. Now, back then, fireballs was also believed to punish naughty children. One local legend tells of a fireball killing a little boy because he refused to finish his chores. Now, fireballs continue to this day to make appearances at Bacon's Castle. People who have lived at the house reported of seeing them ablaze down the stairs, and there's a cemetery that lies close to the castle. Fireballs are also known to rise from the graves. Now, Bacon's Castle has experienced plenty of other paranormal events, okay? There was this interpreter named Frances Richardson, and she'd spent nearly a quarter of a century of her life trying to understand these fireballs. And when she first started her research journey, the house's stairwell had many, many blood-stained steps that she couldn't explain and wouldn't go away no matter what you do to them. And one of the creepiest things seen at Bacon's Castle is the disembodied head of an African-American woman. Now, during the colonial times, the property lodged as many as 300 slaves. It had a total of 18 slave quarters, but only one is still standing today. Now, we all know about some of the history of some of these slave dwellings, and they were horrible, you know. The wealthy colonists, they lived in the lavish big house, and their servants were cramped into rough wood structures with barely, if any, furnishings, and many times they had to make their beds with, rags and piles of hay, that's how it was. Sometimes as many as 10 slaves were squeezed under one roof, and of course illnesses spread very easily. And having only known pain and misery in life, slaves are not restful in death. There's this tour guide there who leads tours of Bacon's Castle, and she tells of a young black girl who tragically died in the house's cellar, and her ghost is there, and she likes to tug on visitors' clothing. And the basement at this place is famous for being one of the castle's most active areas. And, I find that many places, basements are hot spots for some reason. I don't know, maybe dark gloom and doom, or the surrounding wall being made of some of these old places, most of them, a lot of them actually, of limestone. I mean, there's all different kinds of theories why this could be the case. And, things are also known to move on their own at Bacon's Castle. Chairs are rocking chairs, books fly off shelves, doors open and close all by themselves. This one woman, she discovered in her room, she went back to her room one day, and there was a lamp that had been sitting on a table. Well, the lamp was sitting on the floor, and the globe was smashed to pieces, and there's no explanation for that. And it's not just objects that the castle ghosts like to, shift and push around. They're also known to push and touch visitors as well. Many of the spirits are also very noisy. People have heard loud pops that sound kind of like gunfire in the house itself. They hear footsteps climbing up and down the staircases, disembodied voices. Some have even reported hearing voices telling them to get out. And there's been quite a few paranormal researchers who have gathered fantastic evidence at this location. So it is worth a go see, Let's go on to another very famous, very haunted location in Ohio, which is called, I know a lot of you will know this place. Some of you have mostly been there. Maybe you know all the whole story, maybe you don't. But that's the Ohio State Reformatory, also known as Mansfield Reformatory. Now, this historic prison is located in Mansfield, Ohio, and it was built between 1886 and 1910, and it remained in operation until 1990, when a United States federal court ruling ordered the facility to be closed as the result of a prisoner's class action suit citing overcrowding and inhumane conditions. So, obviously, the people won, and they got shut down. While this facility was used in a number of films, including TV shows, music videos, and some of the filming was done while it was still in operation too, it was made famous by the film, I know everyone knows, Shawshank Redemption in 1994, and it was used for the majority of the movie. Now, the history of the Ohio State Reformatory began in 1861, okay? The field where the reformatory would be built was used as a training camp for Civil War soldiers. The camp's name had significant meaning to Ohio, as it was named Camp Mordecai Bartley in honor of the Mansfield man who served as Ohio governor in the 1840s. In 1867, Mansfield was promoted as a candidate for the placement of the new intermediate penitentiary. That was the original name before it changed to Ohio State Reformatory. Now, the city raised $10,000 to purchase 30 acres of land for the prison, and the state acquired 150 acres of adjoining land for $20,000. The cost of the facility at that time was $1,326,000. The Ohio State Reformatory was intended as just that, a halfway point between the Boys Industrial School in Lancaster and the state penitentiary in Columbus, which was intended to house young first-time offenders, okay? So it was more for rehabilitation, so it could get these first-time offenders on the right path, right? So the construction began in 1886 and remained under construction until 1910 due to funding problems, which caused construction delays. Now, September 15th, 1896, the reformatory opened its doors to its first 150 offenders. These prisoners were brought by train from Columbus and put immediately to work on the prison sewer system and the 25-foot stone wall that surrounded the complex. Most of the grounds and support buildings, including the outer wall, have been demolished since the closing. In 1995, the Mansfield Reformatory Preservation Society was formed. They have turned the prison into a museum, and they conduct tours to help fund grounds rehabilitation projects, and they currently work to stabilize the buildings against further deterioration. And the last time I was there, they were working on some stuff. The East Cell Block, which is very, very interesting and kind of spooky, it remains the largest freestanding steel cell block in the world. That's not just in the United States. The largest in the world, standing at 6 tiers high. Now, what's interesting is one of the more well-known deaths to occur at the reformatory wasn't of a guard or an inmate, but of a warden's wife, and her name was Helen Glatke. Arthur Glatke was warden at the Ohio State Reformatory from 1935 until 1959. As it was customary in such institutions, Glatke lived in the warden's quarters of the prison with his wife and 2 sons, and that happened at my jail too. They lived at the building. And they led a seemingly normal life until tragedy struck on the morning of November 5th, 1950. It seems as though, as Helen was preparing for that Sunday's Mass, she went to retrieve a hat box from the upper shelf of a closet. Unbeknownst to her, the warden had placed his .32 caliber pistol on the same shelf for safekeeping, right? The gun fell, it hit the floor, it discharged, and Helen Glatke was shot through the lung. 2 days later, she died at Mansfield's General Hospital. Now, of course, as you can imagine, rumors start to swirl around, as does all, rumors about all heads of whatever or famous people. Okay, so the rumors that were swirling were that Helen had caught her husband having an affair with a member of the prison staff, and that she was planning to drag his name through the mud in a very public divorce. Well, so it makes one wonder, did the gun fall from the shelf or was it murder? Who knows? Is this all unsubstantiated gossip? Well, very possibly, yes, it is. So we do know, while we don't know what the true happening of the gunshot is, but we do know is that Arthur Glatke never remarried, and 9 years later, he suffered a heart attack in the same room where his wife had been shot. We also know that visitors to the warden's quarters often notice the scent of Helen's rosewater perfume and the scent of the warden's tobacco smoke. Some people have even reported that they heard an argument or seen full apparitions of the couple. Never seeing the couple together, but seeing their individual apparitions. Now, aside from smells, sounds, and sightings, people also get touched, and occasionally they get hit or scratched in this area. Now, the hauntings at the Ohio State Reformatory, they go back to a time before the prison even existed, okay? Before it was even built. In the years that predated the concept of the reformatory, a Civil War training camp existed on the grounds. Camp Mordecai had only been open for business for a couple of months in the late spring of 1861 when a soldier began complaining of visits from unearthly spirits, and they were terrifying to him. These visitations left the soldier so horrified that he was deemed unfit for duty and sent to an asylum to recover. It turned out that this soldier would be the first of many to experience the supernatural at Camp Mordecai. At first, war trainees and officials, they began noticing a trend of missing and then relocated items that it defied explanation, Then soldiers started experiencing unusual ammunition, failures when practicing at a certain quadrant of the camp. And before long, it was common for all of the soldiers based at Camp Mordecai to report hearing whispers and muffled voices where there should only be silence. In the northeastern corner of the training ground, recruits even reported hearing voices that would emanate up from the ground. And some of them were questioning their own sanity at this time, right? While it's unclear who or what haunted Camp Mordecai, it is clear that the events experienced by its residents went above and beyond normal wartime stress-induced hallucinations in both frequency and consistency. Modern hauntings at the Ohio State Reformatory are so vast in their manifestations and locations that the list is actually exhausting, right? Visitors have experienced everything from camera malfunctions to mysterious voices to violent attacks and sightings of solid apparitions throughout the building. Shadow figures and unexplainable footsteps abound all over in this place. And Ohio State Reformatory, it's also been featured on a few paranormal TV shows as well. So if you're looking for another very haunted place, if you haven't been there, Ohio State Reformatory is a place to go check out. The next interesting place we're going to go to is South Manitou Island, located in Lake Michigan. It's approximately 16 miles west of Leland, Michigan, and the island is 3 miles wide and 3 miles long, and it features 300-foot sand dunes, deserted shorelines, and empty campgrounds. It's about as creepy as you can get in Michigan, this area. And it's part of an island chain that extends north to the Straits of Mackinac, okay? South Manitou Island was originally settled in the mid-1830s by William Burton to provide cordwood to fuel the Great Lakes steamships. His dock was built in the middle of the crescent-shaped bay on the eastern side of the island, which offered the only natural deep-water harbor between Chicago and Buffalo. Now, in 1847, the village included Burton's Wharf, a house, a blacksmith shop, a grocery store, a barn, and a wooden tamarack railroad track extending from the dock inland to haul wood for the steamers. When the first post office opened in 1870, it was located here as well. There's no active farms on the island, but, the farm buildings and the abandoned machinery, the old school, and the cemetery are reminders of the past. The island is now uninhabited, and most of its buildings lie in ruins, okay? And I will tell you more about the hauntings of the Manitou Island after we come back from this short break. You are listening to Ghost Talk Radio on WBHM-DB, Birmingham, Alabama.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to Ghost Talk Radio. With me as your host, Shelly Robertson. And if you missed the first part of the show, no worries. You can catch the full show archive on Spreaker, Google Play, iTunes, and iHeartRadio at your leisure. And I urge y'all to join me in chat if you want to talk, join in on conversation, talk about some haunted places, or ask me any question. Come on in. Right before the break, I was talking about the Manitou Islands. Okay, so I talked about all the history about the islands and the buildings and what happened there. Now let's get into what the hauntings are all about, okay? Now, the Manitou Islands, they are surrounded by over 50. Think about this. That's a lot. 50 known shipwreck sites, some of which are popular diving spots. There's a preserve that was established in 1988 to conserve the historic and archaeological value of the 50 known shipwreck sites, dating from 1835 to 1960. So, this is where we're going to get into the hauntings, about the hauntings, right? Now, as legend goes, in the late 1800s, a steamship pulled into the harbor one night and dropped off more than 20 passengers who were infected with cholera. Some of them were dead, and some of them were not dead yet, but not doing well, okay? Now, the captain and the crew, they promptly left the sick behind for the local islanders to deal with. Now, the islanders had little choice, and this is terrible, but to dig a mass grave and bury the victims, both the dead and the alive people, in order to preserve their own lives, see? So soon after that happened, the first appearances of ghosts and hauntings began. The mass grave is believed to be near the old cemetery just north of the Bay Campground. This is also near where the old dock used to be located, right? And there is the lady ghost that is seen walking along the beach near the dock carrying a lantern at night. It seems that she was either married or engaged to a man from the island, and one day he sailed to the mainland, but he never returned. It's one of them stories. She waited his return, but he never came back. And every evening, she would dress up in her finest dress and walk down to the dock and wait for him to return. Years and years went by, and she continued her daily watch without cease, right? She just kept doing it. She grew old, but continued her nightly walk until one day she was found dead on the beach. Seemingly, she still died hopeful that one day her man would return to her, right? After her death, the locals saw her ghost waiting at the dock and pacing the beach, just as she did when she was alive. Now, there's this park ranger there who gives a daily tour of the lighthouse that's located there. And this park ranger confirmed the popular paranormal activity stories. He confirmed that there was this other ranger who had apparently broken down, mentally, and he drew his weapon and he demanded to be taken off the island. So the Park Service arranged for the Coast Guard to fly a helicopter to the island that night and remove the ranger. Now, the house he'd been living in was one that had a history of hauntings, and the ranger received medical treatment. I guess he's doing well now in a new career, according to the ranger who confirmed his story. He's doing well in a different line of work. So, the same ranger confessed that he too had experienced hearing voices, footsteps, slamming of doors inside buildings that were otherwise unoccupied. And there's many reports of seeing apparitions at various places on the island, and many people believe them to be the ghosts of the fellas that died on the shipwrecks, right? Very interesting place. I wouldn't mind going to the island, but I would want the ferry boat to wait for me in case I wanted to leave quickly. Next, we'll go to my resident city of Indianapolis, Indiana, to the Hannah House. The Hannah House on the south side of Indianapolis is one of the most haunted places in the Midwest. Indiana State Legislator Alexander Hannah built a 24-room house on Madison Avenue in 1858, and it's actually not far from where I currently live. The mansion was part of the Underground Railroad, and Hannah hid runaway slaves in the basement to escape to Canada before the American Civil War, okay? One tragic night, a group of slaves was waiting to leave their hiding spot, and someone knocked over an oil lamp. The basement went up in flames, trapping the slaves and killing them. The dead slaves were hastily buried in the cellar's dirt floor to cover up the incident as quickly as possible, okay? Investigators and past owners believe those slaves haunt the house to this day. Several people have witnessed the ghosts of slaves and have heard moaning and whispering in the cellars. The mansion was given the nickname the house that reeks of death because occasionally one of the bedrooms smells like rotting flesh, but the next day it smells like roses. Many people have seen doors swing open for no reason. They've experienced cold drafts without any explanation. And also, the apparition of what many people think is Hannah himself has been spotted on the property. The mansion is open to the public, and they offer haunted tours every Friday night in October, and it can also be booked for weddings and grad parties as long as you don't mind a few uninvited guests. Also, they do book private paranormal investigations, and it's a good place to go check out. I've seen some things on TV about this place too. Now, let's go to California, to Rancho Santa Fe, to the Heaven's Gate mass murder. Well, you can call it murder. Suicide site. All right. Now, this place, following an anonymous tip, okay, police enter a mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, an exclusive suburb of San Diego, California, and they discover 39 victims of a mass suicide. The deceased, 21 women and 18 men of various ages, were all found lying peacefully in matching dark clothes and Nike sneakers, and they had purple cloths over their face, right? They even had $5. Each one of them had $5.75 in their pockets. Okay. And none of them had any noticeable signs of blood or trauma. And it was later revealed that the men and women were members of the Heaven's Gate religious cult, whose leaders preached that suicide would allow them to leave their bodily containers and enter an alien spacecraft hidden behind the Halley-Bopp comet. Okay. The cult was led by Marshall Applewhite, a music professor who, after surviving a near-death experience in 1972, was recruited in the cult by one of his nurses, Bonnie Nettles. In 1975, Applewhite and Nettles persuaded a group of 20 people from Oregon to abandon their families and possessions and move to eastern Colorado, where they promised that an extraterrestrial spacecraft would take them to the kingdom of heaven. Nettles, who called herself T, and Applewhite, who took the name of Dew, explained that human bodies were merely containers that could be abandoned in favor of a higher physical existence. Now, as the spacecraft never arrived, membership in Heaven's Gate diminished, and in 1985, Bonnie Nettles, Applewhite's sexless partner, she died. During the early 1990s, the cult resurfaced as Applewhite began recruiting new members. Soon after the 1995 discovery of the comet Halley-Bopp, the Heaven's Gate members became convinced that an alien spacecraft was on its way to Earth, hidden from human detection behind the comet. In October 1996, Applewhite rented a large home in Rancho Santa Fe, explaining to the owner that his group was made up of Christian-based angels. Applewhite advocated sexual abstinence, and several male cult members followed his example by undergoing castration operations. In 1997, as a part of its 4,000-year orbit to the sun, the comet Halley-Bopp passed near Earth in one of the most impressive astronomical events of the 20th century. In late March of 1997, as Halley-Bopp reached its closest distance to Earth, Applewhite and 38 of his followers, they drank a lethal mixture of phenobarbital and vodka, and then they laid down to die, hoping to leave their body containers, and enter the alien spacecraft and pass through Heaven's Gate into a higher existence. Understandably, a spooky feeling descends on most people who get near the lot. But according to some witnesses, there is more than just strange feelings. And what you have to understand, folks, is the Heaven's Gate people believed in aliens, right? And one paranormal expert who had studied the house off and on in the years since the mass suicide said that, aliens is very probable in the area. And they brought into the idea of alien beings coming to Earth and inhabiting their bodies, a kind of weird possession, if you will. And indeed, some of the things people see in the vicinity of this house is very, very questionable. Some have seen what appears to be ghosts, but not always of beings which are clearly human. One person claimed to have seen the ghost of a young girl who had no eyes, but that there were eyes floating near the body as if they were detached and could move around. Some have seen shapes which look much like the famed Greys, the aliens, but which are translucent and disappear into thin air. Still, others have witnessed crafts in the sky above the house, strange little crafts that will dart around back and forth, almost as if they're looking for something or someone. So if you want to check out ghostly and alien phenomena, go to Rancho Santa Fe, California. Now, I got to make this disclaimer real quick about these places. Some of the places in tonight's show, I want to warn everybody and whatever. It's your responsibility to acquire appropriate permissions before investigating any locations. featured in tonight's show. Okay? Private property should be respected at all times, and so should all the posted signs concerning trespassing, hours of operation, and any other local regulations. Okay? So please, everyone, make sure you get permission before you lurk around at any of these properties. Now, what's going on here at the jail? We have June 13th. It's posted on 187pi.com and on the 187pi Facebook page. We do have a ghost hunt coming up the 13th. We are following all the state guidelines. Only 6 tickets available, folks. We have to stay under 10 for mass gatherings. There's a few tickets left, so if you want to come ghost hunt the jail, drop by the website or our Facebook page and secure your ticket. And I would like you all to know what's going on at our network. We have some fantastic shows by amazing hosts and interesting guests. All shows are at 8 p.m. Eastern. Sunday nights, we have Fate Magazine Radio with show host Kat Hobson. Monday nights, we have Paranormal Pride Show with host Denise Pridemore. Wednesday nights, we have Paranormal Experience Show with host Kat Hobson. And you know what? You'll want to be sure to tune into these shows. They have some great topics, great guests, great information. I want to take a brief moment to thank everyone for listening to tonight's live broadcast. I also wish everyone a happy evening and a very happy weekend. Keep safe, everyone. Good night, friends.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.